start sharing. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this month's Alternative Voting Methods Statewide Task Force. I'm Celeste Landry, and I get to facilitate this wonderful group of people. Just an acknowledgement that today is the 18th International Day of Democracy. I just learned this halfway through today, but I thought this was a nice quote from UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Democracy is powered by the will of the people, by their voices, their choices, and their participation. And along those lines, I would love for other people to read quotes or bullet points or things like that, so it's not just my voice. And that might encourage everybody to speak up a little bit. So feel free to volunteer to do that as we go through the meeting. Here's our agenda. We have 3 updates, and then the main part of the meeting is looking at the draft of part 1 of the primary election reform study, which is entitled Why Study Primary Election Systems. I hope you'll find it interesting. I think it's fascinating, but we'll talk about it when we get to it. You all signed in and agreed to our meeting norms, so I'm going to zoom past this one. Here's what we did at the last meeting. We had 3 guest speakers, Colorado College juniors, who are going to do a presentation on simulating single transferable voting for the Colorado State House at a conference which is in October, and it's on our upcoming events. I don't actually expect any of us to go to it, but you could if you want to. But their results were that single transferable voting, which we are sometimes calling proportional ranked voting because that's more descriptive for the average person. It gives much more proportional party representation across the multitude of district maps that you can create these days, like 10,000 maps. And this is a redistricting issue, right? But then you create multi-member districts. So you elect more than one person per district. And that way, if you elect multiple members in a district, you can end up with some proportionality. Instead of one person winning, that's a winner take all district, you can get some proportionality. So very exciting. And we'll talk a lot more about that in this meeting. Jane Dunk, our operations person for the State League, just said that the letter to the Secretary of State that we worked on last month is going to go out to well, we'll talk about this. It's in the agenda too. And then Rich Linz had a comment, and I think he's going to be on the call today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can do some quick introductions. For something like this, I'm happy if somebody else wants to go through and call on people to introduce themselves. I'm happy to go first, but then I don't know, Barb, if you'd be willing to call on people maybe to do introductions.
Okay. Well, it doesn't look like there's too many, so I think I can keep it straight.
We like to do all this stuff at the beginning, and then more people straggle in, but then they get the meat of the conversation. So I'm Celeste Landry, and I'm the facilitator of this group, and I've been working on voting methods. I started with the Boulder County League. I still work with the Boulder County League, and we ended up getting a state position on voting methods in 2017. And I also worked on the national position, which we'll talk about in this meeting, and that was in 2020. So, Barb, you want to go next, and then we can.
I'm Barb Winery. I'm the I'm the a co-director for voter service on the state board. I'm also voter service coordinator here in Greeley, Weld County. So I'm always interested in all things that have to do with voting. So that's why I'm here. Every time I learn a new voting method, it takes me a little while to get it straight, but I'm working on it. But I'm fascinated by it, and after being involved with a redistricting issue, I do think it's a nice alternative to redistricting. And maybe that's something we need to move forward with sooner than later. So I will call on Terry. Is it Terry Canfield?
Hi, I'm Terry. I just joined about a month ago, and I went to the orientation last week, and she talked about I wanted to get involved in voting and helping improve people's access to voting. So I just saw this coming, and I thought, well, here we go. So here I am. I just want to do something helpful and meaningful these days for voting.
Terry,
Climate would have been my second choice.
what's your local league, Terry?
Weld County, Greeley.
Weld. Okay, just like Barb.
Really?
Okay, great.
Cool. Well, welcome, Terry. Thank you. Good to have you on board. And there's plenty of work to do and a lot of things that we can accomplish. So welcome.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome. Let me see. Allison.
Hello, I'm in Evergreen, so in Jeffco. Although we're maybe moving, so I'm not going to get too involved in Jeffco stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've been involved in different elections and different just advocacy for a long time. I'm on the board of a small but mighty organization called the Voter Protection Corps. And I just thought that this would be a really good avenue for me to get involved locally in a very specific way. So I'm curious and excited to hear about and learn from what you guys are up to. So thank you.
Okay.
Allison, you're Allison Gustafson?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, welcome. Nice to have you with us tonight. Let me see. Neil.
Hi, I'm Neil McBurnett. I am, let's see if I can actually turn this on for a second and if my internet will handle it. And I'm long-term interest in voting methods back in the 80s and 90s, and was a board member for the Center for Election Science for a while. I have also done a lot with election integrity, so bringing risk limiting audits to Colorado, and have been a member of the Boulder League and voting methods team for the last 7 years or so. And how about if we go to Tony?
I'm Tony Larson, and I'm a member of the Denver League, and I do most of my activities for the League of Women Voters at the state level. So I've been involved for quite a while, and as I was saying earlier, the environment is really my focus, but I am a coordinator of the task forces. So that's the one reason I'm here, but I'm also interested in what goes on here.
Okay, thank you, Tony. And both of these people, both Neil and Tony, have a lot of experience and background in a lot of these topics, especially when it comes to voting and elections. Jean Cleland.
Hi, I'm Jen Cleland. I'm also in the Boulder League on the voting methods team there for about the last 5 years. I'm also a math professor at CU Boulder, and so I do academic work on redistricting and alternative voting methods. So this is sort of a natural extension of my professional life.
Perfect. Thanks for being with us. You get in the weeds. But it's interesting, so thanks.
They're good weeds.
They're good weeds. Let me see. Who have we missed? Betsy McBride.
Hi, I'm joining you outside of Boise. Our state league adopted a study at state convention in June to think about alternative voting methods. So my schedule would not be complete unless I saw Celeste at least once a month.
So Betsy missed last month because she broke her clavicle.
Oh,
Yes,
no.
I'm sure
no.
she prefers to have come here than break her clavicle.
Yeah.
Yes, well, I'm glad you're back joining us again tonight.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go back and I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I think that's it.
Okay, yes, great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. And you can see Tony's name is on here and Jane Dunk. Jane was the one who let people in at the beginning. Who is the host now?
I am Celeste.
Great. Okay. So a few little announcements before we start. The League of Women Voters of Boulder County has created a web page on proportional representation. So we've made little stickers with this QR code. We've made rack cards, and we encourage everybody to check it out. You can just go to lwvbc.org and then go to the issues. There are only like 5 menu lines, and then go to voting methods, and it'll be there at the top, or you can use this QR code. And some upcoming events tomorrow. There is a Secretary of State rulemaking hearing, and this Senate Bill 25-001 is Colorado Voting Rights Act, or COVRA. And I know Jen has submitted some testimony on that because Jen is an expert on data collection and wants to make sure all the data collection is. And Jen, you've done that for the League of Women Voters. So
Right.
we sometimes submit testimony as the league, usually as the league. I mean, there are also at least 2 other bills that are being discussed that passed this session: House Bill 2513-19, House Bill 2513-15, which are about vacancy. I'm putting elections in quotation marks because to me, it's an election run by the government to fill a seat should allow everybody to vote, but that's not what these 2 bills do. They're only going to let one party and unaffiliated members vote. So we can have a longer discussion about that sometime. The League of Women Voters asked to amend these bills during the legislative session, but they did not get amended to our satisfaction. And then on Saturday, there's Make Democracy Workday from 10 to 2 via Zoom, or 10 to 1:30. I'm not sure. Maybe there's some flexibility on the end time. And go to lwvcolorado.org to register for that. And, today is International Democracy Day, so this is good timing. And it costs $10. But I think there's like a student fee or maybe a waiver if you.
Yeah, I think there's a scholarship.
Yeah.
Button so you can push.
Yeah. The same day, bumping up with the end of the Make Democracy Workday, is the LWV Pikes Peak Region's regular 3rd Saturday community conversation. They're going to meet with the Colorado Springs NAACP on a topic that is of quite a lot of interest to us, called Getting a Fair Share of Power with Proportional Representation. And if you go to the lwvppr.org website, it's right there front and center. It tells you how to attend in person. And it will also be live streamed. I did not see the live stream information there yet, but I've been promised that it will be coming. Jen, you want to mention this one?
Which one? The social choice theory? Oh, yes. So this is an academic math conference basically happening at Wellesley College. It's organized by a math professor named Ishmar Volek, who has written a book for the popular audience on math and democracy, and it's a pretty good book. I don't know what to say about it. It's a conference. If you happen to be in Western Massachusetts in mid-October, think about stopping by.
And the 3 Colorado College students who presented last time will be at that conference. So
Right.
that's part of the reason I put it up there. And I have a copy of the book, so which Ishmar Volek, anyway.
Probably
his
Volek.
book. Anyway, I can bring it and show people when I get a break. Okay, our next meeting date is the regular 3rd Monday of the month, October 20th, 5:30 to 7 on Zoom. So mark your calendar. Okay, we often start off with this position, and we're going to talk a lot more in depth about this position later when we talk about the primary election reform study. The thing that is usually pointed out in this position is the boldface section, which talks about proportional representation by saying we want the elected body to proportionally reflect the people they represent. And guess what? When you use proportional representation, you basically get rid of gerrymandering. So it's a win-win situation. The primary election reform study is not as interested in the proportional representation part because if you have a primary, like in Colorado, every primary goes to a single winner election. So you can't have proportional representation in a single winner election. So we're going to talk more about these bullet points, and the bullet points are numbered for our convenience when we get to talk about them. So we'll get through a few updates right now, and I'm going to have other people read these bullet points so you don't have to listen to me all the time. Okay, here's our agenda. The first thing is the letter to the Secretary of State that asking for rules to conduct proportional ranked voting and approval voting elections. And here's what a ranked voting ballot looks like. You may have seen these. And the way it works is that in Colorado is that only your first choice is counted until something happens to your first choice. They're either they're eliminated, and then they'll look at your second choice. If they win, your ballot never reveals the second, third, fourth, or fifth choice. Although Neil McBurnett and others can ask for what we call the cast vote records, basically the ballot information, and we can do some analysis based on what the voters' preferences were that we didn't see also. So that's very interesting. Both Jen, I know, and Neil have done work in that area. Here's what an approval voting ballot looks like. You vote for all the candidates you support. Even if you're only electing one, you could vote for 3 candidates. You could vote for all the candidates except one. There's no reason to vote for all the candidates because that would be like saying, yeah, I voted, but I don't have an opinion. Okay. So the letter to the Secretary of State was asking for rules for single transferable vote. Also, we are starting to call it proportional ranked voting because that's more accessible, and approval voting elections. And right now, the statute allows Colorado to use proportional ranked voting for municipalities. But if a municipality says to a county clerk, will you run our election? The county clerk says, no, I don't have to. I'm not going to. And they're nervous because there are a lot of attacks on election administrators right now. And so they don't want to go to a new area until the Secretary of State writes the rules on how to do that. This happened with the instant runoff voting single winner version also. And we had to get legislation in 2021 that said, you must write rules, Secretary of State and county clerks, you must conduct these elections. So we may have to do that. That's the next step down here. We may have to get a bill that would force the Secretary of State to write the rules and force the county clerks to run these elections for cities. Tomorrow, Jane is going to go and snail mail the letter that we have written and that our state president, Irene Tynes, has signed, and deliver it to the 4 Secretary of State staff people listed there. So that's very exciting. Happy to announce that. Any questions on that before we move on? Okay. The next thing is an update on the Denver election proposals. Tony, if you want to talk about this, you can. I mean, you could basically just read what it says and make any other comments you want to, and give my voice a rest, and I'll go get that book by Ishmar Volich.
Okay, what I would say is that this started out in Denver as a ranked choice voting Denver and trying to get it on the Denver ballot. As I understand it, it did not get on the ballot, but there's another proposal dealing with the at-large districts. And I guess I'm not totally clear about the method of voting for the at-large districts, but there are 2 issues in Denver, again, as I understand it. And
yeah, this one passed. The at-large one passed.
Yeah, right. And yes, and the ranked choice voting Denver did not pass, did not
Correct.
get heard. So that's where we are right now. The district, the 2 at-large district proposal is on the ballot for November.
Right. And the Denver League will decide if they want to take a stand, and then they'll decide if they want to support it or oppose it. And we've offered to be a resource for them as they study the proposal. But one of the problems with our meeting time is that it's the same time as Denver City Council meetings, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and it's up to Denver to decide what the position will be, what they will do. The stance will be as far as writing up taking a, oppose, support, whatever stance on the proposals now that will be on the ballot. And they will do, it's not a ballot pamphlet that they do, but it's a couple of sheets of paper explaining the ballot and explaining why the league does one thing or the other. So they will, they've always done it in the past. I'm sure they'll do it now.
So in terms of what voting method this proposal asks for, it's the same it's the same voting method as is used for all the other council contests. So if the other proposal, the instant runoff voting one, had gone to the ballot and had passed, then and meanwhile the at-large question had gone to the ballot and passed, then everything would have been instant runoff voting. But right now, everything will be the way the current system is, which is a candidate must win with a majority of the votes. Either if they win with a majority in the regular municipal contest, they win. If they don't get a majority in the regular municipal contest, then the top 2 vote getters go to a runoff at a later date. So
pretty much it remains the same, except for the at-large districts.
It goes from a 2-winner contest to 2 single winner contests.
Yeah. Right.
There's, people talked about, well, what about how do you decide if you're going to run for seat A or seat B? And so that'll come up in the discussion in Denver, but we don't have to spend a lot of time talking about it because you're the only Denver person here, I think. So, but
Yeah,
okay. I mean, ideally, the state league would want Denver Council to elect their members using a proportional voting method as our national position states, but that wasn't on the table. So,
well, but it's up to Denver to decide. What they're,
I can tell you what the state position advocates for, but
Yeah, and-
Denver gets to decide. Yes. Okay. Well, we've got a lot of stuff to do on the
yeah, let's move
primary
on.
election reform study. I think if I stop sharing, maybe you can see my screen for a minute here. Oh, Betsy has her hand up. Here is the book, Making Democracy Count
Oh,
by
there's-
Ishmar Volek. It's a good book. Betsy, you want to say something?
Yeah, if this doesn't match the state league position, can Denver actually decide, or is it close enough to the state position? It sounds from a long ways away in Idaho like the potential to muddy the waters.
May I, Celeste, say something? So there is a position in the position book, both at the state level and national level. The Denver League may use those positions to apply to proposals. And so they need to make sure that they're complying with the position of the League of Women Voters before they take a stance on this particular proposal that's on the ballot. So they can't, to use your term, Betsy, muddy the waters because they need to be following the position. They can choose not to do anything. So, but it's up to them. It's up to them what they want to do, as long as it follows the positions we have at state and national level.
And they have, sorry.
No, if they have their own position, then they have to follow that too.
And if proportional representation isn't on the ballot, then they have to deal with the measure that's on the ballot. So, you know, there's a lot of wiggle room.
Unless there's no position anywhere, and then they don't deal with it at all.
Yeah. Thanks,
Barb,
Tony.
do you want to chime in, or do you see it the same way? Barb?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I guess I just started thinking. I was following you for a while, and then I'm going, well, yeah, they can't do anything if there's no position.
Yeah,
Is that right?
Well, things have gotten a little muddy about this whole issue. I have no idea what they're going to do about the at-large proposal. But they do have to follow what the positions are of the League of Women Voters at the state and national level.
Neil, you have your hand up.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the main notion in my mind is that the positions, I mean, there's several pages of positions at the national level, and some at the state level on a variety of things that it would seem to me can be applied to this. And the sticky part is, in my mind, reading how it affects each of the different goals of, encouraging voters to turn out and supporting democracy, however that can be read and so on. I mean, Tony's exactly right that we need to look carefully at the positions and both see what they have to say about this really unusual proposal. I don't know if other people do this. It sounds really bad to me, but I don't know what our positions say on it. And, at some point, my guess is that we use circumstances like this in general. We don't like to change positions very often, but if there are things that we learn because, oh my gosh, we didn't really have a good position to work with on other issues in the past, that certainly happened, that we say, well, it's time to develop a position because we don't want to be silent. But it seems to me that there's a variety of pretty general aspects of our extensive set of voting and democracy positions that would allow us to take a position on this. And offhand, I don't think it would be positive, but I haven't gone and looked.
And just one statement is that our positions are designed to not be super specific. They're criteria, they're guidelines for putting a proposal up against them to see if the league thinks along those lines. So, and I don't have any idea if Denver has taken the at-large, although I did get one message from one person in Denver that said that even though they're not doing anything about, or didn't do much about ranked choice voting, I know they did something, but not much, that they are looking at this other proposal and they may take a position.
Great. It passed by one vote in
Yeah,
city council. So I imagine it's people who care about elections are going to care about this. Now, how much people care about elections, that's a different question, but people who care about elections will care about this. We have two new people on the line. So Jesse, would you introduce yourself, and then Representative Brianna Titone? Are you there, Jesse? Why don't we go to Rep Titone? Oh,
And it turned off.
just introduce yourself. You've done this before.
I was multitasking. I'm leaving tomorrow for a trip and was just listening. I work on proportional systems pretty exclusively, also on direct democracy somewhat, and best democracy. I operate under a little group I started, and we have members, 1,100 members or so in most of the states in 34 countries on Facebook. The traffic on the website's good. And I basically it's information for educating people. There are better alternatives exist. So
Great. Thank you, Jesse. And looking forward to hearing what you have to say about the primary election reform study.
okay.
Representative Titone, welcome.
Hi, yeah. Sorry I'm a little late. Just wanted to tune in and understand a little bit more about what's on the horizon. I was not exactly a big fan of the ranked choice voting proposal that came last time. I have some skepticism about how the mathematics works on a lot of these, and I think that in a time where a lot of money in politics can really screw up an election cycle, where if you have a system that can be manipulated through raising up an unlikely candidate to take away votes from a more prominent competitor, that's something we should be weary of. And I'm not saying that the system we have right now is perfect, but I think that we need to be very careful to choose the system that's going to have the least amount of manipulation or meddling in the future, and that's why I'm interested. Thanks.
We very much look forward to your comments. Hope you can stay till this 7 o'clock hour. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for to continue on. The last little update is the U.S. Fair Representation Act. And Joe Neguse recently became a co-sponsor again this session of the U.S. Fair Representation Act. What this does is it is a proportional representation act for U.S. House members. For U.S. Senate members, it would use the instant runoff voting form of RCV. But the thing that's more interesting to us that we think has the biggest impact is the proportional ranked voting or single transferable vote and the multi-member districts for U.S. House members. So Colorado currently has 8 U.S. House districts. Under the FRA, Colorado would probably have a 5-member district and a 3-member district. It's nice to have odd numbers because then you get a difference. You don't always just get 2 and 2. The gerrymandering wars have elevated the need for this act, and Representative Neguse is hopeful that the FRA will get more sponsors this session than in past sessions. An interesting add-on to the bill this year is it bans mid-decade redistricting. I know there's a separate bill in the Congress about that, but that's an add-on to this bill too. So, okay, I think that's it for the updates. And now we're going to get into the meat of this meeting. So the state approved conducting a primary election reform study, we'll call it PER. And we're finally getting close enough to start going out to the real world. Anybody who wants to be in the weeds, come talk to us. You can read the whole document, but right now we're just going to talk about part 1 in a more public arena. And part 1 is called Why Study Primary Election Systems. So traditionally, and this is something Tony has taught me very well, the League of Women Voters has steered clear of primary elections because primary elections are seen as political party domain, not for the League to get involved in. But part 1, it lays the groundwork explaining why the League should be looking at primary elections. And it only touches on the direct connection between primary elections and voting methods, but much later, there's a lot about voting methods. So we're going to go through the whole text. And maybe people could volunteer to read this so I don't have to. Neil, do you want to start?
I'm having trouble keeping up with the slides here, so I've minimized that. So I'm not quite sure where you're at.
Okay, I can let somebody else read. Maybe Barb, would you read?
Let's read the slide.
Just read the slide. This is the actual text right now. We can change it. That's part of why we're putting this out here. But, you know, we all need to be agreeing with the foundational statements and you know, the arguments that we talk about. And so, yeah, well, don't worry. Somebody else can do the next slide.
Okay. Well, I just want to know what the task at hand was. Whether it was 4 or 5 slides, this slide, what? Okay, why study the primary election systems? Colorado holds partisan primaries, producing one nominee from each political party, followed by a general election using a choose one polarity voting. Colorado's current primary system is manifestly in conflict with the League of Women Voters voter representation electoral systems position.
And in addition to, asking questions about the content, if you feel like we're going overboard by using an adjective or an adverb like
Yeah, I think manifestively is pretty. What does that mean? Hugely
yes,
totally,
basically.
does it mean totally in conflict? Is it partially what? I'm not
Okay.
sure that's communicating.
Okay, so I'm writing down that, you're questioning that usage. Okay. So let's look at the next slide. So the next slide has parts of that voter representation electoral systems position. And it has bullet points, but here we've numbered them. Whether for single or multiple winner contests, the league supports electoral methods that do all these things. And the 5 that are highlighted are the ones that we're going to zoom in on. So we don't have to read them now because I copied them into the next slides so that you wouldn't have to
Oh, good.
go back and forth between the slides. So let's, so this is what it says. And now the next part of the text has a little story. Jen, would you be willing to read this?
Sure. Consider a congressional district such as Colorado 1, Denver, that is reliably Democratic to the point that the winner of the Democratic primary is virtually guaranteed to win the election. Then, number 1, encourage voter participation and voter engagement is violated since Republicans cannot participate in the one meaningful election that is not a foregone conclusion, the Democratic primary.
Do people understand that statement?
Well, maybe it needs to be clarified in slide 1 when you talk about the primaries and that party people can only registered party people can only vote in primaries, but those are unaffiliated can choose which party to participate in. Is that correct for this?
That is true. Oh, so you think we need to add that here?
Yes.
Partisan primaries, they're called open to unaffiliated. Good.
Yeah, something like that, because
okay.
That means that there are some people who do have choices. If you're but you can also, unregister with one party and register with the other to vote in it if you want to. And
you have to do it by a certain
timeline and following a timeline. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But only those who are registered can vote for their party, their primary party candidates, candidates.
Plus unaffiliated.
Plus an unaffiliated has a choice of which party they can vote for.
Yeah, they have to pick one. They can't vote in both.
But I think that needs to be clear because you can't make the assumption with the Colorado state primaries the way they're held.
I've written down that comment. That's great. Thank you very much, Barb. Yes.
You're welcome.
We'll talk a lot more about different kind of primaries. Jen?
Okay, number two, encourage those with minority opinions to participate, including underrepresented communities, is again obviously violated since Republicans have minority opinions.
In Denver, in CO.
Right.
Senate. Yeah. Everybody, that makes sense to everybody?
Well, and what are you going to address minority parties? Is that the same as having minority opinions?
Well, minority opinion in this example is anybody who's not voting a Democratic ballot.
Okay, well, I would include parties someplace as well as opinions.
It says Republicans here, and here at the little asterisk, it says Republicans could be replaced by voters in minor parties.
Got it. Okay, I see. I hadn't read the fine print yet.
Yeah. Any other questions on the violation of number 2?
Okay, so number 4, promote access to voting is violated since Republicans are denied access to voting in the Democratic primary. Betsy has her hand up.
Yeah, so is there a way to talk about primaries that always elect one party or another without talking about Democratic primaries in Denver? There must be places in Colorado, like Colorado Springs, that you have to be a Republican to win. It
Yes.
just seems odd to only talk about Democratic primaries.
Okay, so we could double the length and have, or we could put another example. This would also be true for Democrats in a predominantly Republican district, such as CD4. We could do something like that.
Maybe.
So,
Go ahead.
no, good. Keep going.
Well, what I was going to say is maybe you need to say like scenario 1 or scenario 2, and darken the primary candidate, the Democratic primary in Denver, or under highlight that so everybody keeps in mind that this is just a scenario. It's an example
Okay,
of a
good,
situation that can occur.
good. Okay, so boldface or highlight Denver.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. This is why we're doing this, because, before this goes out to all league members, we want to do some stakeholder polls. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. Anybody willing to read here? Terry, would you be willing to read? Or Jesse, or
I'll read. I'm just trying to cook dinner at the same time, but I can read if you're interested. Should I go?
Sure. Is that Terry?
No, this is Allison.
Hi, Allison. Thank you.
Hi, sure. I just figured I'd jump in. Why city? Okay, that's the title. Number 5, maximize effective votes and minimize wasted votes is violated since votes cast in the Republican primary don't influence the final outcome.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
In Denver, votes cast in the Republican primary don't matter. Same thing in New York City, right?
Right.
And then there's a little footnote.
Yep. Number 5 is also violated by an open partisan primary system like Minnesota's, in which any voter can cast a ballot in any one party's primary, regardless of their partisan affiliation.
This is what when they talk about open primaries, this is a real open primary. It means you go to the ballot and it doesn't matter what party you're affiliated with, you can choose any party's ballot, just one. It's like we call Colorado open to unaffiliated voters. Minnesota's is open to everybody. Everybody can go and choose one ballot.
But you're saying the same thing is true for them. If it's a predominantly Democratic area, then it just doesn't really matter. Is that the point of that one too?
The point here is more that suppose you live in Colorado Springs. And Neil, correct me if I'm wrong on this. Suppose you live in CD4, okay, and you're voting on the CD4 member of Congress and the gubernatorial primary. If you pick the Democratic ballot, you'll end up having a say in the gubernatorial contest. But not the CD4, but if you pick the Republican ballot, you'll have a say in the CD4 contest, but not in the gubernatorial. because there's more than one ballot, more than one contest on the ballot. I mean, I think that's what it means. Is that, and I should probably ask if the person who wrote that, but is that your understanding too, Neil?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay. And there's a whole definition of wasted votes, which is, it's a technical term. It means that your vote did not help somebody win. So for instance, if somebody wins 70 votes to 30 votes, 40 of those votes cast for the winner are actually considered wasted. It's kind of interesting. And a great thing about proportional voting methods is that you elect more than one person and it minimizes wasted votes. There's a lot of great stuff going on with proportional representation.
I would just chime in.
Hmm.
And, I mentioned before when we were talking about the Denver at-large ballot measure, how we have a lot of nuances in our positions. And I think this is a principal one where restricting voters to only, restricting really candidates to only run in one of the primaries reduces the amount of competition and kind of indirectly can fall afoul of this principle. But anyway, back to the primary study.
Thanks, Neil. Allison?
Okay, yep. While a Republican voter can register as an unaffiliated voter and vote in the Democratic primary, this runs afoul of number 6, promotes sincere voting over strategic voting. By voting for a Democrat in the primaries, as opposed to a Republican she likes more, she is voting strategically and not sincerely. So it looks like there's another.
I know people do this. They might be a Republican, but if you live in Denver, you might as well register as a Democrat unless you're planning to run as a Republican, or register as an unaffiliated, I guess is more likely. And then you can vote the Democratic ballot and vote strategically. There's the footnote.
Yep. Strategic voting is not necessarily a morally dubious action because it can give voters equal power, but having strategic voting be an important feature of a voting method is a dubious quality.
So every voting method has a more effective way to have your voice heard. But if voting strategically is a critical, important part of that voting method, that's probably not a good voting method. I mean, plurality voting, the standard strategy is vote for the lesser of two evils, right? Is that a good thing we want to do? Probably not. We'd rather have people be more expressive in their voting and have those expressed opinions be recorded somehow so that the will of the electorate is realized. But we can't get totally away from strategy. Any comments? Or I feel like people are thinking this is great.
So
I think it's the last.
Jesse?
I'm sorry I had to step away. I was talking with Liz about our event on October 8th. So I don't know if you covered the fact that for the example I'd like to use is the county commissioners are usually selected at caucus, and fewer than 1,000 people in Boulder County will generally pick who the county commissioner will be. And it's all about ballot access. All these systems are designed to restrict ballot access. And as they do that, they predetermine what the outcome's going to be. So I favor systems where people get to choose who's going to be our final representatives. And these systems are designed in such a way as to exclude people in various steps. And the first step they're excluding people at is at the caucus and then the county caucus, where people can't even get onto the ballot. A good example of that is Alan Rosenfeld back in
Yeah.
2014 or 16 or so.
Yeah.
Um,
So Jesse, this is great. These are great comments. They're not mentioned in the national position, but they're important, and we do talk about ballot access in later parts of the study. So we aren't ignoring you, but right now we're talking. So we'll get to that later, but not today, probably.
okay.
So let's, it feels like you're working too hard to line it up with the bullets on the national position. It seems like Barbara had a really good suggestion when she was talking about scenarios. So, for instance, on number 5, the second bullet is a scenario. And so if the section is why study primary election systems, and you list some prominent scenarios, and then maybe just cite national positions, and that's why we need to think about this. It just, trying to link them to national bullets seems to make it harder than it needs to be to put your point across, which is primaries aren't working.
Primaries, well, there are two things. You can argue that they're not working. Some people might argue that they are working, but specifically, Colorado's primary system doesn't align with the national position. The national position would argue that we should change our primary election system so that we can meet these criteria that we currently violate. You said we're trying too hard. I find that interesting. I think we're trying to, say, have a logical argument. This is what the position says, and this is why it's that our partisan primaries don't work with our position. So we should probably, if we have this position and we stand by this position, we should be advocating for different primary elections. I'm intrigued by your idea, Betsy, to try a different approach, but maybe I'm a little more concrete and need to see it laid out and not just outlined. Or maybe you could send me the outline and I could think about it more and bring it to the primary election reform team. I can't see people's faces, so
Okay, well, I had a comment because
okay.
as we're reading through this, I'm trying to fit it into the situation with CD1 in Denver. And to me, the first thing I'm thinking about with what, and this is just one of the previous ones in the last couple of years with the congressional districts, where the Republicans, I'm not in CD4 anymore. I'm in CD8, but CD4 had Lauren Boebert, who I think she went through. I do think she went through caucus and assembly, but I don't know that for sure. But the bottom line is she was running, and then we had 5 other people running for her. And so, and a couple of them had to get circulate and get petitions to get on the ballot, or at least the primary ballot. And I'm thinking, well, a lot of people wanted some other people, but by the fact they had 6 primary candidates running, it just split up the vote. And no matter what, Boebert was going to win. I think she didn't get 50% of the vote, but all the votes were split up. And there might have been 2 or 3 other people that might have been good candidates I would have liked to seen on the final ballot, where everybody was voting to see whether or not they had some competition. So I guess in line with that statement, maybe it'd be better to pick some real life scenarios that have happened and see how they apply. I don't know whether these are real life or ones that are kind of theoretical or representative of what could happen in CD4, but not everybody's, I live now I live in CD8 that's rather competitive, but I lived in CD4 for a long time where, the Republicans, it was just, you might as well forget about it, even participating as a voter in a opposition party to Republicans. And then finding out how they line up, and the fact that they don't meet these standards that we've set for ourselves, and why. Maybe it's because they're all split up in smaller bits, and I'm having a hard time seeing the big picture, or trying to see separate little pictures out of the big picture.
So
or not.
we have one of the people on the team has made a schematic showing the current system, and let's see, 9.2. I'm trying to find it. I think it's in PowerPoint. Okay, I found it, and I'm going to share my screen and see if this helps with your concern. And if there's something in the chat I need to see, please tell me that too. Okay. So here it shows the Democratic primary and the Republican primary of the exact election you were talking about. So Boebert, it says she got 43.7%. I thought she got less than that. I thought she got like 38%. I think this might not be the most up-to-date one, but maybe it is. Anyway, we know she did not get more than half of the vote in the primary.
I agree with that.
So more than half of the people voted for somebody else. And similarly, in the Democratic primary, more than half of the people voted against Calvarese. And then, in the general election, Boebert won by 11 percentage points or so. And does this help?
I'm a picture person, and I do like things when they're, give me a Venn diagram. give me some things, charts to kind of compare and contrast, and give me some other kinds of examples, because I'm trying to imagine them, and some I can and some I can't.
One of the thoughts was that we do a schematic like this for the current system, and then for the other 3 systems that we focus on that are current kinds of reforms. And this may not be as much of a picture as you want. And this is not the most recent version, because you can see it's got in the bottom right XXXX. So there have been some updates to this, but
no, but what I like is there's some you see, there's things that are disproportionate, or what the numbers are, and then you get a summary of what the issues were compared to our standards. So that tells me, okay, these are the problems we have with the current primary. Because
small,
they all seem to be separated in the other examples out.
Neil, were you going to say something?
No,
Okay.
I put a
Thank you.
comment in that.
Okay, I'm not seeing the chat. I guess I'm gonna go and look at the chat right now, but Jesse, you have your hand up.
I was going to suggest that looking at that schematic you had up a little bit before, I like using the term wasted votes. I think we should educate the public about that term, and it's kind of offensive. You have to focus people's minds what the issues are, and I like to frame it as such that you're throwing away 55% of the people's votes. They don't count toward the outcome. And those are called wasted votes. And you educate people that what a wasted vote is. And I think it gets people's attention more than just saying 55% didn't count toward the outcome. Calling it a wasted vote is more overt.
I guess I've heard people say, wait, you're using jargon. You know, it goes both ways. Okay. I'm going to go back and continue sharing my screen, and thanks for all these comments. Okay. Rep to tone, I put the whole list in there. So you can see, I guess I want to go like this. Okay. So we've gone through this one, and this is a great exercise because it's really important for us to get the foundational part talked about. So I'm thinking this is a great exercise. Let's continue on. Anybody want to read this slide?
I'll read it again.
Oh, you read one already, right?
Yeah. In this report, we will evaluate the severity of these violations and other problems with partisan primaries. Identify and analyze several alternative systems that can mitigate or eliminate these problems. We will also discuss some possible adverse consequences of reforms, especially on political parties and other possible ways of dealing with those consequences. Is that unintended consequences?
I mean, usually adverse consequences are considered unintended because you don't usually want adverse consequences. But you know, sometimes you don't get everything you want. You might get 90% of what you want, and 10% is fallout from the reform. So there you have it. So that is just a look ahead sort of paragraph.
So violations is a pretty strong word hanging out there by itself.
I will make a note of that. I think you're right.
Yeah.
You know, I've had to tamp down some of the language, and so if you speak up,
I mean, what you're really talking about is the significance of the position contradictions.
I'm writing that down.
I like that. Significant is good. It's good. Violation sounds like we're going to be ticketed or put in jail. And we might.
Some people should.
Okay, shall we read the next paragraph? Because I can read it. Maine and New York City have instituted a better voting method than plurality, namely instant runoff voting, in partisan primaries. Changing the voting method in a partisan primary can pick a better party nominee and reduce wasted votes in the primary. But those features do not address the issue of allowing all voters a meaningful vote in our elections. So New York City, the Democrats, the people who voted the Democratic Party ballot, they had some advantages. They may have gotten a better party nominee. That's the goal, at least. And they reduced wasted votes in the primary. But that does not mean that they've addressed the issue of allowing all voters to vote in the meaningful election, in the decisive election. So, and since a lot of our national position wants to let all voters have a voice, that's something to consider here. There's a significance of position contradictions we need to consider here. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Anybody want to read this one?
Sure, I will. Because of the problems with partisan primaries, we focus on all candidate primary systems. And the asterisk says readers who are interested in the questions of which voters should be allowed to participate in partisan primaries or how primaries compare to caucuses are encouraged to read the studies by the Maine and Maryland leagues. An all-candidate primary system is one in which there is a single primary contest open to all voters in which all candidates compete and some number of the top-performing candidates advance to the general election. These are also referred to as nonpartisan primaries, jungle primaries, blanket primaries, and open primaries, names we should avoid because they are imprecise or potentially misleading. California's top 2 system and Alaska's top 4 system, which we analyze in part 3, are notable examples.
Okay, there's more about this. I know that the all-candidate primary system was a feature or a bug or whatever you want to call it of Prop 131. But there's more to say on this topic. So let's go to the next slide.
All candidate primary systems can address the problems that occur in partisan primaries. All voters can participate in all elections, which deals with the most egregious violations of number 1s, 2, and 4. Empirically, switching to all candidate primaries increases turnout in primaries by around 6 percentage points. That's according to a study.
Yeah.
As we discuss in part 3, number 5 and number 6 are not automatically satisfied by an all-candidate primary system. However, number 5 and 6 are achievable if an all-candidate primary is combined with a good voting method.
So here's when we get to the issue of voting methods.
So if somebody's reading this, you're going to throw them back to see what 1, 2, and 4 are, and 5 and 6.
It's on the same page, basically, not on this slide, but on the in the document, in the study.
Okay.
Because this writing is right below. So yeah, and I put it in the chat, so you can go back and look at it in the chat for right now.
Do the parts have titles?
They have titles, and they are not written in stone, but yes.
I think the title of the part should be included.
In the study, we've got a table of contents, and I worry a little bit about having a lot of words in a sentence. If we can just say part 3, and if people want to know which part is part 3, they can go to the table of contents.
I disagree.
Okay, I'll make a comment about that.
I'm just saying that people are, I mean, yes, I read the table of contents, and now I'm reading this, and it's a whole big picture and what's gonna, and I don't even know what 1, 2, and 3 means. So unless I'm lucky, I can look at the chat right now and look at 1, 2, and 3 and refer to it.
Yeah.
As a reader, I'm going, so what? I don't know what part 3 is talking about, and why
Yeah.
5 and 6 are important.
I mean, all of this is on one page, so it's so people should be able to see what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 all are by just glancing up, or it might be on the previous page, but yeah. Okay, we're almost done. Neil, do you want to read maybe? Oh, maybe you have a problem reading. Anybody else want to read Rep to Tone? I'll read if nobody else wants to. Okay, we will also devote substantial attention to the choice of voting method for the general election. There are 2 main reasons for this. First, one of the main justifications for having primaries, as opposed to just having a general election and everybody competing in it, is that the primary can prevent vote splitting between multiple candidates of the same party in a general election that uses choose one plurality voting. So like in Louisiana, everybody runs against everybody else in the general election. They've changed that for some seats, but in the past, I grew up there, everybody ran against everybody else, and 2 Democrats or 2 Republicans more likely would split the vote and the Democrat could get elected. Or get the Democrat could move on to the general election, or, there are different ways that it works, but this way, you are more likely to have a majority winner in the general election when you have primaries narrowing the field. So people think that that's a good thing, because who wants a super long ballot? Some people like that, but a lot of people don't. So switching away from plurality in the general election is important if you've got a top 4 or a top 5 primary. If you're advancing 4 people to the general election and then you just use plurality voting, you haven't gained very much. And then the second reason to look at the voting method for the general election is that there are many reforms that eliminate partisan primaries, but replace them with systems that are mathematically similar, so that the issue you started with is still there. I should probably read this word for word so that because that's what's currently in the text, but I did not.
So Celeste, if you're always available to answer questions, this will work. But this is hard stuff for people who haven't been part of this conversation.
Agreed.
I mean, we have slides here because we are doing an interactive presentation. The study itself is long and involved, and the real challenge is getting people to read through and understand it all. So, as I agree with you and Celeste that this is challenging material to work with, but that kind of, yeah, I mean, it's hard to do it in the paper, and we'll invite comment on the paper, but we do have somebody here to answer questions with slides, which are necessarily tighter. But if you have wording changes, I've really appreciated some of the others and commented like that.
I know mathematically similar. Are the systems that replace them mathematically similar? Or are they similar to the ones that eliminate them? I don't know. That's not clear. Many reforms that eliminate partisan primaries.
So,
place
for
them-
instance, we have a partisan primary right now. We could replace it with another system that's mathematically similar, and that wouldn't solve the problems that we've identified when we compared Colorado's system to the national position. So if we're trying to look at what our goal is, we need to look at the entire system, not just the primary, but the primary and the general. So it starts off sort of being we have this partisan primary election system, but it works in conjunction with the general election. So
Celeste,
That's helpful. That's helpful to know what we're comparing it to.
so I'd be interested for some of you who are not math folks to know how you feel about the words mathematically similar, because I know what that means, but I'm a math professor, and I think a lot of people may not really understand what those words mean.
Thank you. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I wasn't sure what it's comparing and what's similar and what the mathematics look like. Thank
I mean,
you.
I might say something like structurally similar, or
Yeah.
would work the same way.
I think would work the same way. It would be much more helpful. I think people
Yes,
get
I do too.
distracted by the mathematically similar framing.
okay, I've made a note to that effect. Great. I think we're on our very last sentence, basically, right here. So, since the ultimate goal of primary election reform is to eliminate the problems altogether, rather than shifting them from the primary election to the general election, it's important to ensure that the voting method we use for the general election does not exhibit the same behavior. There, we didn't use mathematically similar, does not exhibit the same behavior we are trying to avoid in primaries.
Yeah, that's best language yet for that, right?
Yeah.
And so that's like the introduction about justifying why the League of Women Voters should take on this study in the first place, because Colorado's current partisan primaries do not meet the criteria that we have in our national voter representation / electoral systems position. So, and then next time we could look at part 2. Thanks for all the feedback that you've given on this. And
I guess so, sort of just a broader thing. This whole part 1 just feels really long and wordy to me, and it refers to a lot of things that just say, you're bringing up a lot of words and concepts, and you're saying, oh, we're going to talk about this later, but right now you're not explaining it. And I feel like this introduction on the whole may be more confusing than helpful, and I would probably shorten it a lot.
can you give an example of something that you're
Well, just like all the times where like you bring up a thing and you say, oh, but we're going to discuss this in part 3, or we're going to talk about this in part 5. Like you bring up a term without saying what it is or why it's important. And it's just like, I don't know. I don't know. This was just how it struck me, but by all means, I'd like to hear if others have the same impression, because it might just be me.
I just had a quick question. I think we covered this in the beginning, but since it's like the most ridiculous question, but I was trying to get my bearings in the beginning. Who is exactly the target audience for this entire report, and how are they accessing it?
It's a draft report right now, and it's still, part 1 is we thought was mostly done, but we were ready to make it go public. part 2 is probably ready enough to talk about next time. And the target audience overall is all of the league members in Colorado, because this is a state study.
Yeah. So it is league members. It's not just the general public. So like, I guess that was my question, was sort of piggybacking on Jean, sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, comment about, so league members would be a little bit more likely to understand the basics than the general public, I would imagine, right?
I think we're going to have to do a lot of education. I mean,
Mm.
look, the people who came here are the people who tend to care about these issues and know more about them. And still there are lots of questions. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this is very ambitious.
Yeah. And I do think there's a lot of pretty dense information. And if you're not familiar with some of the language or the topics, or, really what is the problem? And, what the problem is, I mean, maybe it just needs to be stated pretty clearly. Or maybe here's the problem, here's some examples of what we have that we're currently doing that supports that problem and why we need to. And I'm kind of going back to something you said initially too, is a lot of league members don't think we should be messing around with political parties related to primaries. So, you kind of have to break down that barrier too, not just what are the problems in relationship to the position, but what is the perception and attitude about even taking on primaries.
Right. I mean, that's why we start from the national position, to make the case that we should be studying changing the way we conduct our primaries. That's exactly why.
Well,
and then we also have come up with a term for one of the basic problems. Neil, you want to talk about it?
If I don't get cut off, briefly, the term is ignorable opposition. One of the central problems is that most districts are controlled by, are safe for one party or another, and that party basically doesn't have to pay attention to anybody who doesn't vote in their primary, because the general election will be won by the person who their primary selects.
Yeah, hadn't thought about that one.
It was sort of a big deal when we decided, oh, we need to name this problem, and then and maybe we should be naming it earlier in part 1 and using it, giving like a real life example, maybe one for each major party first, and then go to the league position. So that would be longer, Jen, but it might be more accessible.
Right. Well, it kind of gives people a starting, I don't know. I used to teach reading in the content area. And if people don't have any background knowledge about this, everything just sounds like a foreign language.
Yeah.
So you need to, people have, that's what I'm saying. Give me something on CD4 that happened and then link it to something, because I can't follow all the examples. I've experienced them, or maybe I haven't. So I'm really don't have any background knowledge to tap into other than what you're saying, talking about examples.
We were a little worried about giving too many concrete examples, like one for each party, because that would just make the study longer. But yeah.
I think that it sounds to me, and I'm a newbie, but it sounds like a storytelling problem. I think it's just the arc of the story, and it could actually be, it's not examples and too many examples. It's just like a sort of 3-act play situation that we're going for that would land more like viscerally with people. That sounds like what everybody's talking about. I'm just trying to get my bearings, but that's what I'm hearing.
That's what I'm hearing too. Thanks, Allison, for it. So it's almost 7 o'clock and we go until 7. Does Does anybody have other comments about, was this a good exercise? I personally appreciate it a lot, but Betsy, I know you're going to be doing a study, so I don't know if this is an interesting exercise for you to see, and maybe it will have some bearing on how you do your study.
Well, I think Neil pointed out in the chat that there's already a position you can use. So the objective, I imagine, is to bring your members, to make them ready to be smart advocates. And that seems to me to be pretty basic storytelling and examples. Political rhetoric frequently has examples and stories, and then people really get it.
Okay. I think the storytelling people, yes, good. Storytelling is a big deal. Jesse, yes?
So this whole exercise is, how do we prop up a corrupt system? It's not a good system. And what we're doing is we're patching something that should be replaced. With most systems, proportional systems are party list systems. The vast majority, over 90% of them. And the parties get to produce their own list. And it's not an expense that goes to the public. It's done internally. We're paying for these two private parties to sort out a very limited and exclusive group of candidates that go onto our ballot. And we're not addressing the root problem.
Jesse, you got here late, but earlier on we said that this study is focused on the single winner contests. And
Yeah.
yes, we are big fans of proportional